Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well. Welcome back to another video in my NFL Power Rankings and Team Breakdown series. If you guys have been enjoying the series, make sure you drop a like on this video as well as subscribing and turning on post notifications. Just a reminder, every single day up until the start of the NFL season, you will see a new video from me every single day detailing a team's strengths, weaknesses, some storylines to watch throughout the season, as well as some key players to watch on the field, as well as for your fantasy rosters, and then touching on a little bit of schedule overview and just some win-loss predictions in general. Quick apology, sorry I didn't get to upload yesterday, so once again this will be another double upload, and it just so happens that both of these teams we will be covering today come from the NFC North. So let's go ahead and get into team number 20 here, the Minnesota Vikings. They are in my tier 3 of teams that are missing a few pieces / that it factor. If you want more info on my power rankings tiers, you can find those in the description below, just to give a little more context and see what the tiers are all about. Coaching and analysis, Rick Spielman is the general manager. He's been here for 10 years. Mike Zimmer has been here for 8 as the head coach. Clint Kubiak, Adam and Andre Patterson as offensive coordinator for Kubiak, and then Adam Zimmer and Andre Patterson as defensive coordinators, and then Ryan Ficken in year 1 at special teams coordinators. The strengths of this team, the receiving group looks very good this year. Justin Jefferson obviously having a breakout year last year. Adam Thielen comes back, even though there are reports that he might get traded as the season goes on. Right now it seems to be that he is here. D.D. Westbrook they also brought in from the Jags, who I think could be a solid number 3 for them. They also drafted Amir Smith-Marset out of Iowa. He could be their return man as well. Irv Smith Jr. Is their tight end, who can now really step up into that tight end 1 role with Kyle Rudolph out of the picture, and Dalvin Cook even once in a while can make something happen in the backfield for them in the passing game, even though he is more of a run-first running back. So that looks pretty good there. And then the defensive front for this team is nasty. You've got Danielle Hunter, who they bring back on a long-term deal, Michael Pierce, Eric Kendrick, Sheldon Richardson, Dalvin Tomlinson, and you even got Anthony Barr, who isn't quite what he used to be, but he's still pretty dang good, and then Chaz Surratt as well, who they just drafted this year, I believe. If not, then I'll correct myself. But this defensive front is tenacious. They are going to stuff the run, especially with those big bruisers, Peterson, Eric Kendrick especially, who I think people kind of forget about when talking about the best linebackers in the NFL. It kind of gets between Fred Warner and Bobby Wagner and sometimes even Darius Leonard, and I think Kendricks is right up there in the mix with all 3 of those guys. So he's not someone to sleep on, that's for sure. And then the secondary should be better than last year. I'm not sure if I would call it a strength, but it certainly will be better. The likes of bringing Patrick Peterson in, I think, is going to be big for this team. You do have Harrison Smith, one of the better safeties in the NFL, along with Xavier Woods. They do bring back Mackenzie Alexander, playing for Cincy last year. He'll be a slot corner for them, assumedly, this year. And then Bashad Breeland and Cam Dantzler, who were on the team last year, I believe, at least Dantzler was, and then Cameron Bynum on this team as well. So at the very least, they should be better in the secondary. However, this is where the weaknesses start for this team. The secondary isn't too deep. That's the biggest problem. If somebody goes down, especially an older guy like Patrick Peterson, or he just doesn't have as many snaps as normal, then you can be talking about going back to last year where they had one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. And we know that Mike Zimmer typically likes to have his secondary do a lot of complex stuff. So having all these young guys on this team, that certainly doesn't help matters out. The offensive line is young, and they're slightly, I would say, they're sitting right at average, maybe a tad bit above or below, depending on who you talk to, but they don't really have anybody great. Garrett Bradbury and Brian O'Neill are okay. You do have Christian Darasaw, who they drafted last year, or this past draft, who I absolutely love. I love that pick, especially trading down to be able to get him. He should be their left tackle day one, and if he pans out, he's going to be very good for them. There are question marks at guard, though. Ezra Cleveland, Olisemaka Udo, I hope I didn't butcher that name. Do watch out for Wyatt Davis, though, drafted out of Ohio State. There were talks before the season started of him going as early as the first guard off the board, or potentially somewhere in the first or second round. He ended up dropping, I think, to the third or the fourth round. So watch out for him. And then for me, I don't know if I would consider this a weakness because this Minnesota team is fairly good. But Kirk Cousins, he doesn't quite excite me. He's not a bad quarterback by any means. He's not going to lose them games. But he's certainly not going to win them a lot of games either. You know, there's all the talk about big game Kirk and not being able to step up in the big moments. I mean, that's kind of been a real thing over the past couple of years. I know it was last year where he broke his streak of winning games on Monday Night Football, or losing them, I guess, is the better way to put it. He just doesn't give me a lot of excitement there. Now, Kellen Mond, however, who they drafted in the third round, he gets me excited for the future of this team. He's got a big arm. He has all the tools that you would want to see in a starting caliber, potentially franchised cornerstone quarterback. And I really did think he was the best of the rest in terms of the quarterback prospects this year after you get past Mac Jones in my quarterback rankings. Kellen Mond was right there at the number 6 spot. And I think that he kind of fell going at the top of the third. I thought somebody in the second would have taken a flyer pick on him, but I really like the fit here. He gets to sit for at least a year behind Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk has 2 more years on his extension. So I think that'll play out fully. And then hopefully what I would do if I was Minnesota is I would move on to Kellen Mond, or at least see what you have in him. Because I truly do think Kellen Mond has that potential, even as soon as next year, to, I mean, let's face it, flat out take Kirk Cousins' job. Kirk Cousins is literally the definition of like a B to B minus quarterback. He won't win you any games. He's certainly not going to lose you any. That's kind of where I sit with Kirk Cousins. And then some storylines and question marks headed into the season. How's this offense going to do with Clint Kubiak now replacing his dad, Gary Kubiak, who I believe he retired last year? So they lost him, and they just decided, oh, we'll just go down the tree, kind of like they did a defensive coordinator this year. And so it'll be interesting to see, because Gary did some really interesting stuff here. They're going to keep this Shanahan system, and hopefully Clint can continue to expand upon that, and hopefully make guys like Jefferson and Thielen and Cook really stand out even more than they already do. The next question I have is, will this secondary be better than last year's with the upgrades? And I would almost certainly say that has to be a yes, just because you have more experienced guys in the building, like Patrick Peterson especially. I think with his addition alone, that's really going to help out this young secondary, and I think I'll talk a little bit more about him upcoming a little bit. And then, can Dalvin Cook have another really healthy year? Last year, I think he only missed 2 games or something like that. I can even remember when I was drafting for fantasy in a redraft league last year, I didn't take Dalvin Cook. I had the number 4 pick, and he fell down the board. It was between him or Derrick Henry. I took Derrick Henry, who ended up being the number 2 running back that year behind Dalvin Cook. But I took Henry because I know that I was guaranteed to get at least 14, 15 games out of him, if not all 16. Whereas the year before, Dalvin Cook really did have questions about his injuries. There were concerns about, can this guy stay on the field? Now, last year he was great, and he was on the field most of the time. But that really has been an anomaly, it looks like, throughout his career so far. So I am hoping that he can stay on the field for them. Hopefully, he is a guy to look out for. Again, coming off of the fantasy boards we'll talk about here in a little bit as potentially the number 1 running back. I don't think he should quite be the number 1 running back off the board. There's definitely, I think, some better options out there, but maybe I'll get to that in a fantasy rankings video sometime. So then some key players that I have. Number 1 is Kirk Cousins. He just has to stay consistent for them, and I guess maybe every once in a while winning a big game would help with that. Patrick Peterson is my number 2 guy. As I kind of said before, I think he's going to really be the catalyst in what kind of kicks this defense into gear, especially with these younger guys on the roster. They need a guy like Pat Peterson to really come in there and set the tone and show young guys how to play football and how to play the cornerback position, because there aren't a lot more guys in the NFL with more experience playing at a high level than Patrick Peterson does. And then my next guy is Christian Darasaw. Coming in his rookie year, he's going to be the starting left tackle most likely for this team, fitting into the system seemingly very well. But he is young, right? We saw last year Andrew Thomas struggled while Becton and Tristan Wirfs had really great years. So you just hope that Darasaw doesn't fall into that former category and that he can stay pretty consistent over there at that spot. And that's all you're going to really ask from him for this year. And then my 3 best fantasy players, man, Minnesota is loaded with guys on fantasy. We talked about Dalvin Cook earlier. He should be at least, I would say, top 3 taken in fantasy drafts. I would take McCaffrey 1, probably Cook 2, and then from there you can argue with me about Kamara, Henry, even Devontae Adams, though I think that might be, I don't want to say a little rich, but I do think running backs should come off the board first, just because of how the math works out with how many there are in the league starting. Dalvin Cook, he's amazing. We don't need to talk about him very much. Justin Jefferson is number 2, really a breakout last year. I had the pain last year of drafting him, and if you'll remember, the first couple weeks he kind of wasn't doing so hot, and I ended up dropping him for somebody else, and the very next week I think was when he decided to break out, and I had drafted him with my last draft pick, so I didn't really care. I wasn't really following football that much, or as deeply as I was now, so maybe if I would have had the same knowledge going into the season, I might have kept Justin Jefferson on my team and dropped somebody else. So that's always going to hurt me. And then this last spot was kind of a toss-up between Adam Thielen and Irv Smith Jr. I'm going to give the spot to Irv Smith just because tight ends come at a little bit more of a premium. He's going to take over for Kyle Rudolph as that tight end 1. Being in a Shanahan system where they use tight ends a lot over the middle of the field, can be a reliable check down guy, a reliable mesh route type of guy. He is someone that they can really look to now with Kyle Rudolph not being there as a true tight end number 1. He's got breakout potential this year, and he's fairly young as well. And then my dynasty sleeper player, I already talked about him earlier. I'm really hoping the guys in my rookie draft today do not watch this video, because I'm really hoping to take my guy Kellen Mond. I already talked about him a lot earlier. I'm a really big fan of his game and what he brings to the table. I really do think as soon as next year he can be competing for Kirk's starting job. So draft Kellen Mond this year, put him on your taxi squad, wait till next year until Kirk leaves or something like that, and then you can either start him, you can use him as trade bait, and hey, you know what? You probably got him in the 2nd or 3rd round of your rookie draft. He really is, I think, a fantastic sleeper pick, great value, all the stuff you look for. I have him in one of my other dynasty leagues, and I could not be happier. I think I got him in the 2nd or 3rd round, and you love to see that. So keep your eye on Kellen Mond. If you can, if you're watching this video, please draft Kellen Mond in your dynasty leagues. You will not regret it. And now for the schedule overview. Unfortunately for Minnesota, they have the 5th hardest schedule in the NFL. They have got a bit of a hacksaw to deal with in terms of teams they play. They have to play Seattle, Cleveland, at Baltimore, at LA, playing the Chargers, and then the NFC North with teams like Chicago, Green Bay, who are going to give them trouble, obviously. So some key games for them. Week 11 versus Green Bay. That's pretty obvious. Week 15 at Chicago. It is a Monday night game, and they have a Thursday night game the week before. So they are going to have extra time to prepare for that game, and there's pretty good potential that they could come on top in that game at Soldier Field. Week 17 at Green Bay. Green Bay does have a Saturday game the week before, so that might be a little tough to win, but that late in the season, those NFC North games will matter. Same thing week 18 at home against Chicago. That game might decide second place for the division. That's a bit of a spoiler alert for how I feel about Chicago coming up here, but those are some key games for them. Unfortunately for Minnesota, my prediction is going to be 6-11. They just really do have a tough schedule. Unfortunately for them, the teams they play at home, like Seattle and Cleveland, are definitely not gimmies. They have to go play at San Francisco. They have to play home against the Rams. They've got some tough games, man. Home against Pittsburgh even. I think that's a tough one for them. There's a lot of tough ones on the schedule for sure. But luckily my floor is 5 wins. They do have a couple of easy ones. I think at Cincy week 1 they can win. They also play Detroit twice a year. I think that's 2 easy wins on their schedule. And there are some teams which they just generally have more talent than, which I think they can beat with a little bit of bully ball there. And then my ceiling is 11 wins for this team. You know, there is a chance that this all works out this year. Clint Kubiak brings something great into the team. That secondary really comes alive with Adam Zimmer and the other guy. Sorry, his name escapes me right now, even though I just said it at the beginning of this video, where some stuff could really start to turn on here for this team. Unfortunately, the Vegas over-under for them is 9 wins. I would say take the under on that. They really do. Go look at their schedule. It is a rough one for sure. And, you know, you can argue for wins. You can argue for losses. But I would also urge you to look at the other team and look at their schedule and what they have coming up the week before when they play Minnesota. There's a couple times where they really get the short end of the stick on some of these matchups and some of these games. Overall, though, I mean, this team has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. It's pretty top-heavy, but there are guys for sure. The front 7 on defense is great. They have a nice receiving group as long as Thielen stays on the team. And I think Clint Kubiak should be able to continue this Shanahan system and really make Kirk Cousins look a little better than he is, frankly. But I think as long as he is at quarterback here, and I think the secondary, I still have my reservations on them. I really do have my questions about this Minnesota team and just how far they can go in the NFL. I mean, let's think about it. Last year, Justin Jefferson was a breakout guy. Dalvin Cook stayed healthy for most of the year, and they still went 7-9. I mean, you take that into account, along with the fact that they have a tougher schedule this year. I don't know. It's going to be tough for Minnesota. I think they're going to have a disappointing year, unfortunately. I am a Packers fan, so there could be some bias coming from there. I really try not to show it. I hope I haven't showed it in this video. I guess let me know in the comments below if you saw that at all. And where do you think I have Minnesota? Too high, too low? Let me know there as well. Once again, if you liked what you saw in this video, make sure you subscribe, turn on post notifications. Trying to make it a goal to get to 50 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you guys could help me out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. Just another reminder, every single day up until the NFL season, a new video will be coming out previewing every single team, giving my power rankings and team breakdowns of them. So stay tuned. Later in the day will be upload number 2. And until then, I will see you guys on the next one.